So hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to channel Ask Dra. This is yet another episode where I am going to inform you, I'm going to educate you, and I am going to empower you with knowledge about stuff and issues that are going on around your country, your continent, and the world at large. So guys, what are we talking about? In the recent past, there has been a conversation about the Kenya shillings against the dollar. But one thing stood out in the midst of all that conversation. And what I'm talking about today is something called the Eurobond. So many people said or claimed that the Eurobond was the cause of why the Kenya shillings, of course, appreciated against the dollar. But there are so many Kenyans out there who were wondering, what has the Eurobond got to do with the dollar? And some were also wondering, what is even a Eurobond in the first place? Being your number one public informant, I am here, of course, to educate all Kenyans and all the people who would want to know more about the Eurobond. What is a Eurobond? How are they issued? Why do governments go for Eurobonds? How many Eurobonds has the Kenyan government accessed? How many other African countries have actually accessed the Eurobond? And because of that, let me take you, of course, straight into understanding this. And I'm hoping that you shall stick to the end of this episode, because I'm even going to go deeper into understanding the details of just the recently acquired Eurobond. What was the purpose for that Eurobond? This channel promises to educate you, promises to impact your life in a very different way than you're used to. So I'll ask that you, of course, click that subscription button. I also ask that you like, ask that you comment. Your feedback is very paramount and important to me because it enables me to know exactly what you need. And I will also make sure that I give you exactly what you need. We all know that there are so many ways in which the government accesses money. Governments, like businesses, like individuals, also generates income. It relies on income for it to carry out its obligations. And one of the ways in which it generates income is through taxes. We know that also, in case the taxes are not enough, governments do go out to borrow. Where do they borrow? They can borrow from other countries. They can borrow from commercial spaces, commercial entities, or they can borrow from international organizations that have the goal helping out countries in times of need, multilateral loans. Those are loans accessed through organizations like, of course, the IMF, the African Development Bank, and all such kind of institutions. But today, our focus is not the taxes. Neither is our focus, of course, the multilateral loans. Our focus today is something called the debt, commercial debts. You're going to borrow money either from banks, from stock exchanges, and you're borrowing that money at the market rate that has been determined by the forces of demand and supply. And it is through that channel that one of those avenues is something called the sovereign debt. Sovereign debt, those are debts that are accessed majorly by countries. So countries will go to a stock exchange, whether it is the New York Stock Exchange, whether it is the London Stock Exchange, and you will be able to ask for a specific amount of money. And the background of your country will be perused, and they will try to understand the risk level, and then it will be approved based on how risky they think you are. In the case of Kenya, Kenya has been, of course, a guest of the London Stock Exchange for a while now. And what Kenya has been doing is to go there and ask for assistance. Whenever you hear something called a bond, it's just a debt, in another word. And what it does is it helps countries to carry on some of their obligations without fail. What are Eurobonds, guys? Eurobonds are basically, I know so many people, the moment you hear Eurobond, you are thinking Europe. And you're not alone. So many of us have thought like that for a while. But let me now end this conversation today once and for all. Eurobonds have got nothing to do with Europe, guys. It is just, in definition, it is a type of loan that you access in a country that is denominated in a different currency. It is a loan that you go to access in a specific country, but the loan itself is denominated in a different currency. Kenya goes to the UK to access a dollar kind of a loan. You see, dollar is not the currency of the UK, but Kenya is going to access that loan in the UK, and yet the loan is denominated in a different currency, the dollar. Kenya can also still go to the UK and access a loan that is denominated in Chinese yuan or Indian rupee or Japanese yen. And when you access, for example, a loan that is denominated in Japanese yen in UK, it will be called a Euro yen bond. So the Eurobond statement has got nothing to do with Europe. Why will governments go to access Europe? Guys, you know very well that accessing loans through multilateral channels have its own limitations. Multilateral channels are usually, most of the time, lenders of last resort. Bilateral channels are basically from other countries, and they usually come with some specific objectives. For a country to give a loan to another country, they will come with specific conditions aligned to their foreign policy. And sometimes, or most of the time, countries are not very comfortable with some of those conditions. You will realize that the amount of loans that countries, of course, access through bilateral loans, while they're there and they happen, they're not as significant as the amount of money that people access through multilateral channels and, of course, the commercial spaces. Now, that brings me to the justification why commercial spaces are usually the best places to access loans. Multilateral loans are the cheapest, but like I have told you, they are lenders usually of last resort. They don't necessarily give money for development purposes. They give money for fiscal policies and monetary policies purposes. But when it comes to development purposes, then most of the time you will realize that governments tend to go to commercial spaces. Why? Commercial spaces are very liquid. They always have money. They usually always have an investor willing to put their money, and therefore it is very easy to access those monies, and they are instant, they are quick, and you can easily sort your issues with those even though you are given in market rates, but commercial loans are very good. Number two, they don't have any hidden agenda. As long as you are able to repay, commercial loans are limited only to the contractual obligations of the lender and the borrower. So you see why governments tend to prefer commercial loans. What then are the benefits to the investor? And who are these investors? If you go to access a Euro-Yuan is a Eurobond that is denominated in Yuan, in Chinese Yuan. It means you are basically targeting the Chinese investors. As an investor in China, you have the opportunity to invest in countries which you will otherwise not have been able to, but in your local currency. So Chinese investors will get a chance to invest in a country like Kenya, but in their own local currency without ever needing to step in the country of Kenya. What you only need to know is that the country of Kenya is issuing a bond and you are the potential investor in your local currency. It helps investors to diversify, guys. You know how the diversification of investments is important. When you want to really protect yourself against risks, investing in only a specific location is risky. Investing in only a specific type of facility is risky. Investing in only a specific type of currency is risky because it means you're exposed to anything that happens to those specific portfolios. You are easily exposed. So investors tend to want to spread their risks across different countries, different facilities, and all those manner of stuff. This kind of a facility called sovereign Eurobonds, they help investors to spread their risk. That is why investors love. Also, they are cheap and highly liquid. In the event that an investor wants to trade in their facilities, it is very easy to access buyers and sellers. Because remember, these bonds are being traded in an exchange, in a stock exchange. And stock exchanges, like for example, the London Stock Exchange, which is one of the biggest stock exchange and the oldest stock exchanges in the world, they definitely have the kind of liquidity that investors prefer, so that they are not tied down the entire period of contracts. What are the benefits to the issuers? The benefits to the issuers, and the issuers here, I'm talking about now a country like Kenya. What are the benefits to the issue? You have now something called flexibility to choose a favorable country to originate from. As a country, you can choose specifically where you want that Eurobond to originate from. Do you want it to originate from US? Do you want it to originate from, of course, US dollars? Do you want it to originate from Japanese yen? Do you want it to originate from? That flexibility makes you choose a favorable country, and also it enables you to choose between countries that have the lower interest rate. You can imagine if the interest rate in China is lower than America, then it gives you a chance to limit your exposure in terms of interest rate, and that is really good for a country. You also kind of avoid currency risk. There is also a huge range of bond maturity period. You will get all manner of Eurobonds available. You can get 10 years, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, depending on what is favorable for your country. That flexibility and availability of maturity periods really enables you to find exactly what you are looking for. So those are just some of the benefits that both the issuer and the investor get. And the issuer in this case, guys, where that money will go. How does a country access these debts? You'll find that a country has to select a specific investment bank or a specific commercial bank that will act on its behalf in terms of issuing. The country cannot generally go and do it by themselves. So you'll have to select an issuing bank which will do that. And once the proceeds come through, the proceeds will be channeled through that bank, which will be the custodian. So the bank will be the custodian of the notes to show that this investor has put this amount of money and they will need to be repaid. And even when the repayment times come, the repayment will be done through the same bank that you have selected as the issuer. So the borrower in this will select a specific bank or commercial entity. Kenya has always used Citibank. That is why you'll see Citibank in those documents, you'll see Citibank appearing there so many times. And majorly also, it is Citibank because they are using the London Stock Exchange. And you know that the origin or the headquarters of Citibank is definitely in the UK. So the question then, someone will ask me, why London Stock Exchange? Why did the government of Apple decide to use the London Stock Exchange? And I'll tell you this, the London Stock Exchange is the oldest stock exchange in the world. I think it dates back to the 18th century. And therefore, it has the experience and it has the exposure of the kind of stock exchange that countries are looking for. I don't know whether this is a major issue, but of course, Kenya is a former colony of the British, and therefore, there is usually a certain existing relationship between colonies and their colonial master. There is an existing relationship, and Kenya as a country will definitely feel more comfortable having those kind of loans, of course, through the London Stock Exchange. But that is not the main reason. The main reason is the London Stock Exchange has the most diversified pool of investors. They cut across the whole world. You will find all manner of investors in the London Stock Exchange. And therefore, it brings you to the point again that I was saying. It gives you an advantage of accessing all manner of finances from across the globe. And because of that diversification of the investor base in the London Stock Exchange is one of the strengths of the London Stock Exchange. And therefore, most sovereign bonds will be floated in the London Stock Exchange. It is also Europe's largest capital market with a deep pool of liquidity and international investors. It has the largest capital base. Capital, that means, is the amount of investors that are trying to put money in the London Stock Exchange is the largest in London across Europe. Therefore, why wouldn't you want to go and try to get that money from there? And you know very well that stock exchanges, they come in to make sure that they avail funds for investors who cannot access those funds locally from their commercial banks. Some of the amounts of money that countries demand commercial banks cannot be able to provide you, because there are large amounts of money that only robust, big, and experienced stock exchanges like the London Stock Exchange can provide you. What other countries in Africa actually have accessed funds in the London Stock Exchange? I know not so many people know this. So many other countries in Africa have accessed the Eurobonds, but you can access it in different ways. Whether the government can go for the Eurobonds, or if not the government, then some companies within your country can also go straight to the exchanges and they'll be able to access money through equity. And I hope I'm not confusing you when I say equity. Equity means some companies in Africa have been listed in the London Stock Exchange. People can invest directly into those companies and own shares into those specific companies. And you'll be surprised to know that even in Kenya, there are companies in Kenya that have already been able to access funding through equity in the London Stock Exchange. Do you want to know which companies those are? Then let's go. You see, I did promise you that you're going to enjoy this content. You're going to learn a lot from this content. And I'm clapping for you because you've reached this far in watching this video. Now, to find out what happens next, please subscribe to this channel, click that notification button, and just stay and wait for me to upload the next episode.